Hello, writers. I'm Josiane Fortin, and today I'm interviewing Eleanor Hatherley. So, she is the self published author of the book Hello Happy, A Teenager's Guide to Creating Positive Mental Health. So, thank you for being with us today. And please start off by telling us a little bit about you.
Thank you very much. So I was a graphic designer. That's what I've done most of my life. And then I started to get into a lot of personal development stuff when I was sort of in my 30s and 40s. And I just loved it. I mean, it was really what I wanted to do. So I went on loads of courses. I've got bookshelves full of books downstairs. I've just read every single possible book and been on so many trainings. And I became an EFT therapist, which you may have, emotional freedom techniques. It's the tapping that everybody's talking about. So I've been doing that for about 10 years. I've also got a daughter, a 17-year-old daughter, so I'm a mum as well. And I'm really passionate about sort of parenting with really good psychology and really understanding, how people tick and why people get problems with self-esteem or anything like that. So I've kind of combined it all into a book in the end, which came together nicely with the graphic design and the parenting and the mental health stuff.
So, you combined everything that you're passionate about into that book. So, that's
I
so
have.
awesome. And I'm just wondering, is that a book that a teenager should read or a parent should read?
Well, I designed it for teenagers to read because the thing with teenagers is they get to the point where they don't really want to share their problems and emotions with their parents. And then I just met so many teenagers who were plainly really struggling, and the parents didn't really know what was going on or how to help them. So I decided to make it into a sort of self-help guide so that they could just sit down and read it themselves. And it's very practical. It's got sort of exercises for them to do, and parents are encouraged to get involved if they want to, but it's very much something that the teenagers can work through on their own.
Can you share with us one of the question, like one that you particularly like?
One of the
The
oh,
question that you included in the book and that the teenager has to work on?
like because they're like little exercises for them to work on. So I mean, each chapter there's a little exercise at the end. So they're mainly exercises where they have to sit and sort of feel into things. They're quite quiet ones where they have to close their eyes and get in touch with feelings. Or I do a little technique called the Bay technique, which is all about rather than trying to avoid an emotion, to really feel it and let it into their bodies and expand it, and to really be with it, because it just helps to calm that emotion down. So that's one technique.
And I would like to know, how long did it take you from the day you decided to write a book to the day that you hit publish on that book? How much time did that take you?
Well, interestingly, I didn't actually know I was writing a book until I got quite a long way into it, because my daughter was homeschooling for a couple of years, and we kept coming across lots of teenagers with awful problems, and I really wanted to help them, but it's quite difficult to sort of bypass parents, and you can't really say or do anything. So I decided to put together a little sheet on the sort of things that might be going on, just to help people. And I just started writing, and it was like, oh, I need to do a bit about that, and there's that, and it just got longer and longer and longer. And then I just sort of at some point thought, okay, I'm actually writing a book now. I've never
Yeah.
thought I was going to write a book, but this is actually a book. And it got so long, I actually ended up having to cut quite a lot of it down to make it shorter in the end. So yes, I'd say about 2 or 3 years though. It was more a sort of long-term project whenever I had a bit of time, rather than something that I rewrote it. Every time I thought I'd finished, more stuff would come in for me. It was almost like stuff just flowed in that I needed to write about. I'd come across things and people would say things, and that would trigger a whole nother kind of chapter or section, and it just kept getting longer and longer. And I'm still thinking of things now, even though it's published. So it's kind of one of those things, isn't it?
So you would need like a part two.
Well, I think I think I've probably included enough for teenagers. I don't want to overwhelm them, but I'm definitely, my next project is to write one for young adults. So to sort of target like sort of university age, and young people leaving home, and sort of, maybe 20s and things, just sort of starting out in life. And then really what I want to do eventually is one for adults as well. So
Okay.
it's all the same stuff. I mean, the teenage book actually works for everybody. It's not really just teenagers. So that's my next project.
That's interesting. And I'm interested in hearing from you. What advice would you give to an aspiring author, someone that's looking, like maybe listening to the podcast, looking to write something, not really sure? What advice would you give that person?
Well, I mean, it's a massive process writing a book. I think it has to be something that you feel really passionate about and that you really want to do. I mean, for me, it felt like it kind of just flowed. It was almost like I didn't really overthink it. It just sort of happened and flowed through me. Now, sometimes I look back and think, God, I wrote a whole book. How did that happen? But it just felt quite an organic process. So, you know, as I say, I think that was because I was so passionate about it and I researched for so long the subject. I just knew my stuff. So it was just almost a case of just bringing all that information out of my brain and structuring it into a book.
Yeah, because it had simmered in your head for so long that you had like everything, like all the bits and pieces in your experience too of applying everything to your life and what it did to your life. And once every, like all the information flowed through you, like you said, did you have to hire an editor? Did you do it yourself? How did you condense everything down to the main points, the main advice that you wanted to share?
Well, I'm because I've got a graphic design background. I'm also a trained editor, so I was very lucky. I can I can write. I know how to edit. I know how to proofread. So I didn't have to get any help at all with the book. I then designed it myself and put it all together. Did the cover. So it was quite weird. It was almost like all the skills I needed were just there, ready for this book. Um, I I was aware that there was a lot of information in it, and it's quite long, so I've kept it very concise. I've tried to be very sort of not use any more words than I have to describe anything, and everything's very clearly explained, and the chapters are very short, so it sort of breaks down, you know, into easy little sections to read rather than being a very long, overwhelming book.
Yeah, so the teenager can take set aside a little bit of time every night and like do the exercises and read it through. That's
Yeah.
very clever.
Yeah, that was the idea, that they do one chapter a day. So they read
Yeah.
this little chapter, maybe 3, 4 pages, do the exercise, practice that thing for the day, and then move on to the next thing.
Yeah. And what do you think was the hardest thing about becoming a self-published author? How did you live that? Because you are your own editor, you can create a cover. What was hard about being a self-published author?
I'd say actually the hardest bit now is the marketing, because that's something I don't have the skills for. And it feels like that doesn't flow for me. That's hard work. So, you know, this is where I am now with it, is trying to market it and get it out there and tell
Yeah.
people about it. And yeah, that definitely feels harder for me. I didn't can't really thought that I'd have to do that, but it's kind of obvious you have to.
Yeah, but you were focusing maybe on the present moment of writing a book and being excited
Mm.
about sharing your knowledge, and then you publish your book and like your friends buy it, your family buy it, and then you realize like you have to promote it. And what are you doing right now to do that promotion? That's a question I always like to ask because we all look to get more efficient, to get in front of more buyers. What do you do, and what has worked for you?
Well, I mean, I think I first of all started off promoting it amongst friends. That everybody knew I was writing it. I've got lots of friends with teenagers, so I initially had quite a good sort of, you know, quite a good number of sales just from people I knew, and I got a few recommendations as well from people, and then it sort of fizzled out a bit once that market had been tapped. So I mean, social media is the kind of place to go to. So I'm kind of still slightly getting to grips with that. And I've got my daughter going on Instagram. So she's doing Instagram posts to the teenagers to try and sell it to them. And I'm on Facebook trying to sell it to the mums to buy for their teenagers. So which has worked quite well because we've both got a sort of different style of posting. And so we're getting, you know, we're selling some copies, but I just feel like I need to talk about it more. And so I'm working with Melanie Whitaker. She has a Facebook group, Rocking My Social Media, and she's brilliant. She's so enthusiastic, and just kind of giving me that bit of a kick, when I need it, and just trying to get me going on social media a bit more and getting
Yeah.
out there and things. So that's really helpful.
That's
So,
really
yeah,
interesting how you recruited your daughter to do the Instagram for teenagers. And I do believe that some teenagers are really actively looking to improve their lives and get to know themselves, and um, they like social self-development. But there's like this other part where it's going to be moms that are just going to leave the book on the bed and hope that their teenagers are going to actually read it and do the exercises, because like it's so important to know ourselves and to go deep and do that self discovery. So I hope these teenagers that maybe they're not looking for that, but it just happens, and it's on their way, and they just dig into it and they just enjoy it.
yeah, hopefully. I mean, that's the aim, is that I mean, I think one of my when I had a look at some other books on the market, sort of similar things. We went to the library, my daughter dragged me there and said, we've got to go and see what else is around and what the competition is and things. And actually, there's lots of really helpful books that have a lot of tips and advice and sort of ideas. But the difference with my book is it goes quite deep. So we're not looking at how you to manage anxiety or sort of techniques for this or that. We're actually looking at why have you got anxiety in the first place? What are you thinking about yourself? What are you feeling? What are your beliefs? So I've been calling it a therapist in a book, because it is almost like unpicking all their beliefs and their traumas and their childhood experiences and school experiences, to really just to understand where these patterns come from. And I talk very much about mental health things being symptoms rather than actual things that happen to you. They're just symptoms of how you're feeling and thinking about yourself. So there's a lot of stuff about emotions and thoughts and how to control your thoughts, and just stuff about creating untrue stories about yourself, trying to be like everyone else, those sort of things. So I really hope by the time they finish it, they just really understand how to be a human being, because I think society just does such a bad job of teaching children how to be happy human beings with good self-esteem.
Yeah, definitely. We have some issues with mental health, like all over the world, specifically now with the pandemic. Everything is rampant, like issues just come out. So it's very important to take care of our mental health. And you said you had some writing projects in the future. Anything that you've learned through that first experience that you say, okay, so I've learned this, I'll do this differently or better? Like, have you learned something, a nugget of gold that you want to share with us?
I mean, I hope I can use the existing book as a sort of template to write the young people one, because it's pretty much all the same stuff. I'll need to sort of change references to school and families into some other stuff, but it should be, hopefully it'll be a lot easier to put that together. And I now know how to make a Kindle ebook, which was a bit of a nightmare the first time round. So yes, it certainly will be an easier process. And then, I like the idea of having a sort of little stable of books that I can market together rather than just marketing one book.
Yeah, then you can have a book for the teenager, and then a book for the little kid, and then a book for the mother. So
Yes.
all as a family, we can work together on our mental health.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And do you have a launch date for another book, or it's just like one day you'll get to it?
I think it's one day I'll get to it, really.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think it'll take long to get it out, but yeah, hopefully sometime this year I'll get the next one out.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing with us. If people want to know more about your book, where can they connect with you?
I've got a website, eleanorhatherley.com, and there's a page on there called Books. On the menu, you can have a look at the book there.
Do you sell them only on Amazon, or did you go
Yes,
wide on distribution?
yes,
Amazon, that's the place to go.
yes,
Okay.
that's the place to go. Yeah, yeah.
All right, awesome. I'll make sure to share the link in the show notes. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.